If you take a look at what we're seeing with Skhainik's at the moment, at the open jumping 11% on that US listing plan, the Micron earnings, of course, there's been almost sort of a very strong correlation there. What do you make of this potential $29 billion US listing plan? Because there is a situation where we're seeing potentially some struggles for the domestic market in Korea to be able to handle the enormity of the demand for companies and tech like Skhainik's.
Yeah, certainly companies go to the US because they're looking for that depth in the capital market that they have there. It's not unusual for companies to list in the US relative to their domestic market, and I think that is just taking advantage of the demand we're seeing in this part of the market, and given that it is going to be a longer term theme we see playing through. So obviously there's been lots of concerns around the issuance of equities this year, the rise in that, and also the issuance of investment grade credit. The market has had the ability to absorb that, and we don't see this as being relatively any different to that. There's a lot of money that's still there, still being allocated through pension funds, etc., which will absorb a lot of this issuance. So we think it's, again, just a way of seeing these companies continue to expand, to attract that capital, to allow them to grow, and to meet some of this increased in demand for what they actually produce.
Given that we had SpaceX absorbing a huge part of the IPO capital out there, are you at all concerned about SKha이닉's US listing? And also, just to your point earlier about moving toward perhaps more quality tech, given that we have seen even this week the uncertainty about some of these tech names, including even hyperscalers being at one time compared to software stocks, how much really certainty is there in this space?
Yeah, it's two parts to that question, really. I guess on the first part around, is SpaceX taking all the oxygen out of the room when it comes to demand for these large IPOs and the expectation around some other ones coming through this year? I don't think that's the case. I think there's plenty of demand for these companies to be part of these companies and thinking about the opportunity they present. So I think it's natural that a lot of these companies are looking to list a little bit earlier. Again, and they're listing earlier relative to how long they've been private, so it's been for a while. So I don't see that as being a real challenge for the market. The second part about moving towards more quality tech, I think we are seeing a lot more differentiation when it comes through in terms of the performance around some of the individual hyperscalers, as well as thinking around the different performance of AI-related sectors, whether it's utilities, materials, hyperscalers, thinking about semiconductors. You are seeing that differentiation come through. So I think a bit more selectivity around where to position in that value chain for AI is important over the second part of the year. And really it does again come back to focusing on where all that capex is flowing through the upstream part of the cycles, and that's where we would tend to focus on at the moment.
Kerry, of course, some of the optimism also has to do with how the Iran war negotiations are going. You're seeing oil now retrace.